Okay, let's begin. We're going to continue today with this question that we started with last time. I remembered one bit of data. When we finished on Tuesday, we were talking about the idea of rules of thumb, right, that natural selection could favor organisms behaving in certain ways just based on rules of thumb rather than the actual knowledge of certain situations. And one of them that I think is a classic and interesting example relates to the kibbutz in Israel. These were these communal living arrangements where lots and lots of people were going to live together, and the idea was they would be educated, they would be taken care of, and hopefully in the end people would then get together with other people from the kibbutz, and it would be sort of, this idyllic, self-perpetuating group. And what they found, first it was anecdotal, but then later it was analyzed more formally, and they found that never on a kibbutz did two people who grew up together end up hooking up. 5,000 people they looked at. Never did you see a male-female couple result from that. Now, why would that be, and why would I bring that up in relation to rules of thumb? Not only were there no prohibitions against this, people were encouraged. They thought this was going to be a good idea. What do you think? Exactly, yeah, they were raised together, and so I listed those ways that you have of kin recognition, the rules of thumb. I say, well, remember the people that you grew up with, they're more likely to be kin than not. And we have these incest taboos. From a genetic perspective, it's not good to produce babies with someone who's a close relative, and so something's probably being triggered in this unnatural situation where you have people who are unrelated, but they're living in situations that normally would trigger something in your brain that says, aha, these are all siblings, so I should probably not mess around with any of them. Anyway, even after the study was first done, people have still been encouraging this, and as far as I know, the number is still 0 of people who have hooked up. I had a professor, Irv DeVore, and he was telling this story, and he said the way that he assessed it was this. This is the cheesiest thing ever, but for some reason I can't get it out of my head. He said he described this rule of thumb as those who potty together don't party together. He was a Boston guy, and so when he said potty, it actually did sound like potty. Anyway, sorry, I apologize. But it is right around the age when babies are being toilet trained, 2-ish, 2.5, that it seems like contact then seems to trigger something, that the incest taboo. Okay, so we're going to address this question. Why do we see so much kindness in the world? This is just the overhead from last time as well. I said I was going to develop a complete theory of kindness, and it was going to involve 2 separate explanations for it in different situations. They could overlap, but sometimes there'd be shared genes, and in other situations, we'll see that there's reciprocity, or another way of describing this, again, this is just the overhead from last time, that we said that we're looking at which genes are going to increase in frequency in the population, and they just increase if they have high fitness. They have high fitness if that gene tends to be reproduced at a higher rate than others. So it could be that one gene causes you to increase the reproductive success of other individuals that carry that gene. That was what we called kin selection. So that's me using my time and effort so that my brothers have more babies, or that my cousin does. But I was a little reluctant to do it with the cousin because he doesn't share as many of my genes. Here's what we're going to talk about today. There could be a gene in you that causes the behavior that says, I'm going to help you out, or I'm going to help you out, or I'm going to help you out, but I'm going to do it in such a way that you're going to return the favor someday. So the gene that caused me to do that behavior, if I've chosen wisely, it's going to get paid back at some point when I need a favor done to me. So we'll call that reciprocal altruism. And between the two of these, we're going to see that almost every situation is explained. So before we move on to reciprocal altruism, I want to talk about the fact that we notice that much of kindness is just directed towards individuals who are your close relatives. We're not surprised when we see, the kid who R is 0.5 between the parents and the kid. We have Jack at home. Sorry. Got to put a picture of him up there, though. Makes him happy. But we're not surprised when individuals share some genetic material with each other. But a critical aspect of this class is that I want to generate hypotheses. And so what we want to do based on kin selection, all right, see you, Jack. We got another family. You can look at any families that you want. We want to think about what are some hypotheses that we can generate. So let's see. I'll come back to that. Oops. One of the hypotheses that we could test, I've written up there for evidence of kin selection, I put murder. So in the case of murders, we can think about, okay, this is certainly the opposite of kin selection. This is the opposite of kind behavior. We'll call it as unkind as you can get. Who should be the most frequent murder victims? Let's say we look at murders that happen within a household. Yeah, we hear about that a lot. Kin selection is going to offer us some predictions. 2/3 of all the murders in the United States are within family murders. And by that I mean there's some household, and 2/3 of them, so only 1/3 of the murders in the U.S. don't involve people who live in the same house. So the question is this: who should be the most frequent victims? If you don't have our theory of kindness, you'd say, well, we assume it's going to be randomly distributed. There should be no additional information given to you about how closely related they are or not related. But is that going to be true? No. Who are going to be the most frequent victims of murders if our theory of kin selection is useful? Spouses are not related. Who else? What's the coefficient of relatedness between a parent and their child? 0.5. That's not 0. Stepchildren, that's a good one. Who else? Step-parents. Mother-in-laws. Here's what the data look like. All the spouse. This is the expected rate. So you standardize it for, sorry about the overhead, we lost the light bulb on the other one. But based on the number of individuals, they calculate, okay, what would we predict if it was random? It was just based on how common they were. Spouse, more than 3 times as likely. Non-relatives, this is your mother-in-law. This is, friend, something like that. Or, an uncle who is a married-in uncle, etc. Whereas if you look at the R equals 0.5, very low relative to what's expected. If you look at the parents, again, 0.5, lower than expected. This is pretty powerful. It just says, if you share genes, you're much less likely to get killed by someone. Now, we can examine, though, even then within offspring. And we could say, all right, well, what about the case when infants are killed? It does happen, not that often. Who would we predict who the killer is in the case of babies? Babysitters. Ooh, don't say that. I have a lot of babysitters in my world. Not so common. Who else? Give me another guess. Or not a guess. Think about it. Mother? A mother killing their R equals 0.5 baby? No. Siblings? What's the coefficient of relatedness between me and my sibling? R equals 0.5. Remember the pedigree we did? So, no, I'm not going to do that. In fact, I'm going to do nice things for them. Uncles and aunts that are not blood relatives, or parents get divorced. Mom gets divorced. Usually she has the kid. She gets a new boyfriend, step-parent. So you've got this whole myth of Cinderella, the evil stepmother or the evil stepfather. And here's what we find. Age of the child, when you have both natural parents there, victims per million, almost no babies killed. Step-parent, more than 100 times, close to 600 times more likely to be injured or abused by a step-parent than a biological parent. 100 times more likely to be fatally abused. I can't decide. I see these data, and that's crazy to me that it's that radical, the difference. But at the same time, I am not surprised at all, right? R equals 0. Not only R equals 0, you're the step-parent, there are costs. There are opportunity costs, right? So you're with your new spouse, she's got a kid, that is reducing your reproductive success. This doesn't have to be conscious. In fact, it isn't conscious. So it's not surprising, but it's really dramatic. When these data were first reported, a paper called the Cinderella Hypothesis, they generated a huge amount of controversy. Why do you think they generate controversy? Because they're not true? Yeah, step-parents do not like to hear this. Nobody was complaining that the data were not true. The data are true. But what they were saying is, this misrepresents it. It says, wow, it looks like if you are with a step-parent, get out of the house now. The vast, vast, vast majority of step-parents are really good to their step-kids. And so it conveys a message that's true, but it's a little bit misleading. The vast majority of stepkids are not injured by their step-parent, but it's just when you do this comparison, this is still victims per million. And so it's really low frequency. Nonetheless, the fact that there is such a dramatic difference is interesting, and it's what we would have predicted. Remember, I asked you to try and develop your own theory of why you see kindness, and you have to be able to have lots of predictions that we can test. So there's a lot of selfishness in the world, and the few times that it does look altruistic, if we define altruism as a behavior by one individual that comes at a cost to them that benefits another individual, when something appears to be altruistic, we find out that very commonly it is kin selection. They actually are behaving selfishly from the perspective of their genes. So the question is there any decency in the animal world? Can we find what I would call animal friendship? No. This is the depressing, cynical part of the class. But it's serious because I want to have a theory that helps me to make predictions, and I want to understand how the world works. But that's a pretty strong prediction, or a pretty strong assertion, that if you are not related, we're not going to see kindness. That's what I'm calling friendship, just the situation where you do something kind for someone who's not related to you. In the animal world, we see all sorts of situations of kin selection. Whenever you hear kin selection, the first thing that should pop into your mind, Belding's ground squirrels, right? Female standing on top of the hill, risking her life, yelling to protect her relatives. So we do see acts of apparent kindness. I wouldn't call them true altruism because she is benefiting her own genes. But when we look for actual kindness between non-relatives, the answer is no. What about the rules of thumb? Yes, you could see maladaptive where she thinks she's doing something that's kin selection when you've moved her. But in that situation, because it's a situation that never ever would occur in the world she evolved in, yeah, we can make bizarre things happen. Okay, I lied when I said no here. I can find a couple of examples. Still, out of the 20 million species that are alive on Earth, the answer is more or less no. But I'm going to give you an example, a couple of examples of actual, what I would call friendship in the animal world, or what appears to be friendship. And we'll start with the case of the vampire bat. This is actually not a vampire bat. I couldn't find a good picture. This is something called a false vampire bat, but they actually do eat frogs. This is the moment of impact. Here's what I can tell you about vampire bats. Vampire bats live in caves. They live in these roosts where there will be hundreds or sometimes even thousands of individuals, and they'll go out every night. They're nocturnal, and they suck blood for food. That's how they get their nutrition. They tend to do it on livestock. They'll find a cow. Sometimes they'll find a horse or a deer. Big animals like that, they land. They've got, it's sort of the equivalent of a mosquito landing on you. They've got these razor-sharp teeth, and they secrete this anticoagulant so that the blood doesn't clot, so it just keeps flowing, and they just lap it up. And they get their meal that way. If they go 2 nights in a row without finding any food, any blood, they will die from starvation. They're very small, and so they can't store a lot of fat on them, and so they're always sort of on the brink of death from starvation. But here's what we see when we look at them. Every now and then, a bat who hasn't gotten food for 2 straight nights, back at the roost, will see some other bat come in who's got blood dripping down his mouth and say, please, 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 can I have some of your food? I'm going to die. And the bat that is full will vomit into the mouth of the other bat. It's very touching. I mean, would you do that for your friend? Vomit in their mouth? But what's going on here? This is really, really a good example of something that appears altruistic, at least to me, right? Because giving up food brings you closer to death. So that has a true risk to it. And yet they do it. The thing is, if someone begs you for blood and you don't give blood to them, they remember. And then if ever it happens that you're begging for blood, they don't pay back. So what happens is they're keeping track. And so that brings it even closer to what I would call friendship, right? As long as you return the favors, they will be nice to you, and everybody wins. Because a full bat, by this I mean usually it's a bat that has eaten on multiple consecutive nights, so they've got a little bit of a reserve, a full tank of food. Another example, and there aren't many of these, so don't get the idea that there are lots, is something called a cleaner fish. And the cleaner fish goes up to a different species of fish, and it swims around it and right into the mouth, and it nibbles away at little patches of fungus that are growing or ectoparasites, and it eats them. Now, why does this fish not just swallow it down and get a little bit of a meal there? I mean, think about the size of it. Now, they're not poisonous. That's pretty big. So that's like the size of chicken fingers or something. There's a benefit. You don't want fungus growing in your mouth, do you? Or ectoparasites on your scales on the outside. And so they've got this arrangement where the cleaner fish will get these things off of you. You benefit. Cleaner fish benefits because they actually get nourishment from the fungus or from the ectoparasites. And so you give up the potential meal, but in exchange, you benefit, they benefit. So that's one other example. I like the cleaner fish example because I know it's not kin selection. Sometimes you might think, with those vampire bats, for instance, you might think, well, how do you know they're not relatives? That was people's first interpretation when they saw it. Oh, they're probably regurgitating into the mouth of close relatives because we know about kin selection. And so they had to start marking all the bats and keeping track, and they found out that they're doing it for non-relatives. In the case of the cleaner fish, is it kin selection? No, they're different species. They couldn't possibly be related. There are a couple of species of cleaner shrimp as well, and divers find out if they go places where they have these cleaner shrimp, the shrimp will come up and they start nibbling around your fingernails, just sort of grooming. If you open your mouth, they'll actually go into your mouth. So how did they discover it? People just saw this. How do you know whether it's something they learn when they grow up or if they're actually genes that code for this reciprocal altruism behavior? I don't know of any good experiments, but I did hear of one anecdote that I thought was good. There was a graduate student who had one of these fish that the cleaner fish tend to work with, and it was a grouper. And every day this guy would drop in a piece of food, and the grouper would go zap, and it would get it. And he did this for 6 years. And then one day he said, I'm going to check out this whole cleaner fish thing. So he got a cleaner fish, and his grouper had never seen one. His grouper had no patches of fungus. His grouper had no ectoparasites. But he dropped it in. The grouper went like this, and it stopped, and it backed up. It looked at the thing, and then it just sat there, and the thing started nibbling away, even though there was nothing to nibble at. So it's just an anecdote, but it says, hey, there's something in them, I think, genetically, that causes them to just have that response in that particular situation. I'm not sure how they get identified. I don't think it's a chemical. I think it's just a visual thing. You could test that relatively easily doing the thing I told you, like with the little tadpoles where you clean them off and then see what happens. I don't know. That would be interesting to know. How do they convey? Because somehow they are communicating it to them. I assumed it was visual, but I don't know that. All right, so I would conclude our first take-home message that cooperation is very rare in the animal kingdom. You can find some examples of it. The vampire bats would be one. The cleaner fish would be another. Lots of cases of kin selection, but I would not call it true altruism. I would not say that one individual is doing something at a cost to them from a fitness perspective that benefits the other individual. I'm saying that they're still, in the case of the vampire bats, they benefit because the bat they regurgitate for is going to return the favor when times get tough. But in humans, friendship is a big deal. We all have friends. They're an important part of our life. And so I like thinking about the question then, all right, well, what about us? I want to use our theories to learn more about myself. So you have the question, does unconditional love among unrelated individuals exist? For some reason, I always think of that when I look at this picture. They look so happy. Are they going to be happy forever together? What's that? What? She doesn't have a diploma. They let her walk though, and she's going to go to summer school. So, my friend Terry, my co-author on Mean Genes, was taking his qualifying exam. He and I have been friends for a long, long time. I think I told you at one point while we were writing Mean Genes, in an 8-month period, we sent 20,000 emails back and forth to each other. Just a lot of it was work, but a lot of it is just that we're close friends. And he was talking with one of the people on his thesis committee about altruism, and this guy Vernon Smith, who ended up winning the Nobel Prize a couple of years ago, said to him, well, tell me about unconditional love. Do you have that kind of relationship with anyone? He was single at the time, but he said, yeah, I think I do with my friend Jay, which I thought was nice. And Vernon said, really? And Terry's like, yeah, we do anything for each other, and over the years we back each other up, if either of us needs help, we'd help them out. And then Vernon said, do you write a lot of emails to Jay? Terry said, oh yeah, tons. And he said, what if you wrote 20 emails in a row to Jay and he didn't respond to any of them? Terry'd be like, wow, well, I'd call him up. I'd send him some more. And what if Jay says, yeah, sorry, didn't have time, I'm busy. And what if you wrote him 100 more and he didn't respond to any of them? Terry said, I'd probably cut him off. Vernon built it up, but essentially it was at some point it would be like, oh, well, I guess that relationship is over. And so Vernon's like, you go from unconditional love to cutting someone off for a few unreturned emails. And the point he was trying to make was, you think things are unconditional frequently, but they're not. There are conditions, but the conditions you think are so obvious and certain to be satisfied by both sides forever that it is unconditional love, but the conditions are there. And so I want to think about a couple of situations. Let me tell you a couple of stories that are just anecdotes, but in one case I was living in an apartment downstairs from this old woman who was a professor at MIT. This is in Boston. And one day I was making cookies, chocolate chip cookies, the one thing I know how to make. And I didn't have any flour, so I went upstairs. I knocked on her door. I said, hey, Jean, can I have some flour? And she said, sure, come on in. She gave me a bunch of flour, and I left. That was it. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for anything. She just gave it to me. You don't seem as impressed as I was. Okay. Let me tell you another story, a different story. I had a P.O. box in Harvard Square where I would get my mail. And so I'd go there every day. I'd walk in, and I'd also, I'd mail my bills or whatever. And so one day I go there, and I've got all these bills to pay. So I'm sitting on the steps outside, and I have a little book of stamps. And I sit there, and one by one, I'm putting the stamps there. And there's a woman sitting next to me, and she's doing the same thing, or doing, taking care of her business. And I finish putting all the stamps on, and I get up, and as I get up, I notice that the book of stamps, which is closed, falls off my lap, And I know that all the stamps are gone. I just used the last one, but I didn't realize it was there, and it falls off. And so I'm going, the box is right across the way. I'm going to mail it. And I think, I'm going to see what she does, this woman next to me. And so I don't say anything. I put them in the box. She doesn't say anything. And so I walk, and I kind of go around. There's a little edge of the corner. I go around the corner, and I see she puts it in her pocket. And so she gets up. She starts walking towards Harvard Square, and I follow her. I want to see what she's going to do. And she gets about a block away. She reaches into her pocket, and she pulls it out, and she looks, and there are no stamps there, and she throws them away. So we got two different stories here, right? Jean giving me something for nothing, and the stamp stealer trying to take my stuff. We get different outcomes in both of these, and it probably seems pretty obvious to you, right? Why in some cases we see the kindness, some cases we don't, right? What are they? Or we could phrase it this way. What's the big impediment to kindness in the situations where we don't see it? Why is the stamp stealer not going to say, hey, you dropped your stamps? And a lot of people would, obviously, but why are we not surprised? She's never going to see me again. And so when she does the cost benefit in her head, it says, small potential benefit, except she doesn't know I'm following her. But she thinks zero cost. What about Jean? Why is she giving me the flower? She might need flour sometime upstairs. She might need something else. She had this dog. What's that? She knows me, right? Or she knows where she can find me. And so somehow she's going to see me again, and maybe she'll need something. She had this dog, Bilka, and she used to ask me to walk the dog whenever she'd go out of town, and I would say yes. I didn't like the dog, but I would walk it again because maybe I'll need flour or something. What is it then? So we had one idea, impediment to kindness. The idea was you're not going to have a repeating interaction. What else? And cheaters. By that, I mean you could do something kind for someone, but the big risk, especially from an evolutionary perspective, is that other individual benefits from it. They don't return the favor. And whatever genes they have that say accept kindnesses, don't return the favor, could cause them to have higher reproductive success. So whatever genes they carry, next generation, there are slightly more of those than the ones that say be kind to others, don't get anything back. Even if that is good, whatever that means, if the genes that code for those behaviors are not as well represented, they disappear. Question?
You just said what I was going to ask.
Oh, okay. So the issue here is in which situations do we expect it? In which situations do we not? You're very, very vulnerable when you make that first good action, kind action. So as I just said here, if you do something kind for another person, and I'm using it's a very fuzzy word, but think of it in terms of evolutionary biology, in terms of fitness and reproductive success. Anything that benefits you, somehow if it causes you to be healthier or have to spend less time looking for food, more time looking for mates, more time taking care of them, any of those things, whatever genes coded for that, they're going to be better represented. So this is why in the animal world, we don't see it that often. How does it ever start? First one that's nice, some other individual's like, wow, thanks for that extra food. Ha-ha, sucker, and they leave. So you need a situation where they're not going to take the favor and run. And what we can do is we can think about what are the situations where we would expect reciprocal altruism to evolve. What would be the conditions that would be conducive to it? First is going to be repeated interactions. As long as you see these individuals over and over and over again, it's more likely to occur. Why is it more likely to occur if you've got repeated interactions? There's really two separate reasons. They can't escape, so you can punish them if they're not nice, if they don't return the favor, and what else? They can return the favor, yeah. So those are the two separate issues. One is you can punish the cheaters, and two is you can benefit from the other kind individuals. So you got to have repeated interactions. You have to have situations where it's high benefit to the recipient and a low cost to the actor. If I had gone up to Jean's apartment and I had said, hey, Jean, can you help me out? And she's like, sure, no problem. And I'd say, I need to buy a house. Do you have $800,000? She's not going to do that. On the other hand, if it's relatively low cost, particularly when the benefit is high, and this isn't Hamilton's rule here, but this is still making the acknowledgement that we're talking about, fitness is decreased when you do the apparently altruistic act. Fitness is being increased on the recipient of it. And so we need for there to be relatively high benefit to the recipient, relatively low cost to the actor. You got to be able to keep tabs on people. What if, imagine for a minute that humans don't look different. We all look exactly the same. So I go up and I ask Jean for some flour. And then some other time I go up and I ask her for something else. I want some milk or something like that with my cookies. And she's like, well, no, I gave you flour and then I asked you to walk my dog and you said no. I'll say, that wasn't me. I would totally walk your dog. She's like, no, I am. I'm like, no, it's someone else. And now she can't tell. Were you the one? And I'm like, no, come on, give me the milk. I will totally pay you back. But if you can't tell them apart, it's very easy to be a cheater, right? When you've got that anonymity. So you need to be able to keep tabs on people. Now, can you think among your friends, is there anyone who, if you go out to dinner and you're like splitting the check at the end, anyone who's always coming up a little bit short when everyone kicks in, they don't quite pay their full share? Yes? How many of you are that person? Oh, sorry. I'm kidding. I went out to dinner once. I was right in Westwood. There's a restaurant you've probably never even seen it called The Gardens. And I went to it's on like Lynbrook and Glendon, which won't help you either. Anyway, I went to The Gardens. Terry was in town, Terry Burnham, and my friend Bill was in town. I think I was with Julia and this friend of one of Julia's friends, Campbell, was there, and Campbell was like, oh yeah, I'm going to bring this new boyfriend of mine. And so we had never met them. We said, all right, well, we'll see you after this movie. And we meet, and we're like, okay, where should we go? We decide on The Gardens. We eat. We're sitting there eating, and I order a turkey burger and a Diet Coke. Terry orders a turkey burger and a Diet Coke. We always order the same food. Our friend Bill orders a hamburger and a Coke, and Julia orders something similar. And this guy, Campbell's boyfriend, first he orders these appetizers. He's having some calamari. Then he orders a scotch. And then he orders something else. And then he orders one of their like specials. There's this very complicated entree, et cetera, et cetera. And so meal goes on, and we eat our turkey burger and our Diet Coke. And he orders a dessert as well. And so the bill comes, and we throw our money in. And I say, all right, I'll make sure everything's okay. And I look, and we're short. We're really short on the bill. We're like $40 short. And I say, whoa, we're a little bit short here. And I look, and Terry's got a PhD in economics. He knows how much his meal cost. Bill, also a smart guy. I've been to The Gardens a zillion times. I know how much it costs. And I've already accounted for a pretty big tip. And Julia, same thing. So we kind of hem and haw, and this guy is not saying anything or doing anything. And so I'm like, all right. So I throw in a little bit more, like a 5. And Terry's like, all right, he gives a little bit more. Bill puts in a little bit more. We're still kind of sitting there. I'm like, hey, we're still short. And Terry's muttering under his breath, we're smart people. We could actually figure it out. He's thinking, let's just tally up what everyone has. And I'm like, nah, don't do that. So I throw in the remaining bits so that we're fine. We leave. I've never seen this guy again, but I get a call like ages later from Bill. This is like a year later, and he's like, do you remember that guy, that cheapskate we had dinner with? And the funny thing is that Terry and I have been talking about this guy this whole year before Bill has brought it up, about cheapskates. I remember that cheapskate? And so in our mind, this guy that we spend maybe an hour and a half with having dinner, that's the only interaction we've ever had with him. We have talked about him for probably 3 more hours, and we don't know his name, and we just call him Cheapskate, because we're keeping track. We want to punish him, and people like him. And it's not that surprising, right? But it says, hey, there are some conditions. We would predict that you're only going to see kindness under these situations, and when they occur, you will see it. If they don't occur, then we would expect not to see it. And suddenly we're having a prediction now. Well, maybe in a lot of these animal species, they can't recognize individuals, or they don't have repeated interactions because their lifespans are not that long. Or, they don't have situations where they can actually help out another individual. And suddenly it's starting to maybe become clear why in humans we're pretty good at having friends and at reciprocal altruism, but other species aren't. Given that we are, and we know humans are good at reciprocal altruism, the question then we should be thinking about, sorry about this overhead, what are the design features that we'd expect? So natural selection is producing our brain, and it's going to produce it with certain emotions, abilities, features. What do we think is going to be common in our human brain, things that we're able to do, given that we know reciprocal altruism is pretty common in our world? Well, we should be good at certain things like recognizing faces. You hear people say to you all the time, oh, I'm really bad with names. Does anyone ever tell you, oh, I'm really bad with faces? No, we're really good at faces. We're all good at faces. And in some really cool experiments, it's been shown that vampire bats are good with faces as well. They can recognize individually 100 different individuals. We would expect them to be good. Otherwise, they can't keep track and punish. On the other hand, we don't see reciprocal altruism among Paramyscus maniculatus, the field mouse. Paramyscus polianotis, the old field mouse. We don't see any reciprocal altruism. I would expect that they're probably not that good at recognizing other individuals. But in the case of humans, thousands, a few people are really good and can do, close to 10,000 different faces. So we shouldn't be surprised at that. What else? We ought to be good at keeping track of cheaters. I asked how many of you were keeping track of cheaters among your friends. Lots of you could think of someone immediately that you're a little bit wary about. I'm still talking about cheapskate. Another one that might not have immediately come to your mind is this. We ought to be voracious consumers of social information. And by that, I mean, if you are going to be dispensing with acts of kindness, with acts of apparent altruism, you want to do it to someone that is going to be able to give you back something of value. The more you know about the individuals that you are kind to, the more likely you can choose the ones and dole out your favors to people who are likely to help you out. In other words, you want to know the people who are relatively healthy, the people who have relatively good reputations for kindness, the people who are relatively good at acknowledging when they have debts, people who, if you think about from an evolutionary perspective, people who are relatively high status, various things like this. And I want to take a little sidetrack because of this. We expect evolution to cause us to be good at this. It's just a variant of we ought to be good at keeping track of cheaters and recognizing faces. In other words, every person out there is a potential friend, a potential trading partner. And so you're constantly looking at them and remembering and keeping track and trying to evaluate. And maybe you don't get the information from them, but you get it from someone else about whether or not they're going to be a good trading partner. And for that reason, though, our brain is built in a way that I think has some comical things. All right, you know this guy. Tell me something about this guy, right? We know it's Tom Cruise. No, don't tell me. Tell me something more specific than that.
He's a Scientologist.
Okay, we know his religion. He's a Scientologist.
Depression.
What's that?
He doesn't believe in depression.
Doesn't believe that depression should be treated by drugs. Okay. He's married to Katie Holmes. So he's short. He's got a chipped tooth.
A unit tooth.
A uni tooth. Two adopted kids. What are their names?
Connor and Isabella.
Nice. What about, and so he's adopted 2 kids, so we know a little bit about his fertility, or we had some concerns about his fertility, but now we don't, right? Because he has a baby that's his. What's her name? Suri. Okay. So we know lots of information about how much does he make per movie? 20 million, yes. All right, so keep that in mind. We've filed away all this information about Tom Cruise. What about Julia Roberts? She's very pretty. Her smile is big. She has twins, so we know about her fertility. What are their names? Hazel and Phineas. Yes, you're right. And she just had another one, too. Is she married? What's his name? And what's his profession? Cameraman. Very good. His profession now is Julia Roberts' husband. Was she married before? No, they just messed around. The singer, Lyle Lovett. Yeah, so we know about her previous relationships. How much does she get per movie? Close to 20 million. So we know lots of information about her. Let me give you one more person. My mom goes crazy for George Clooney. Tell me something about him. Is he married? He is dating someone. She's a Vegas dancer. Tell me something about one of their recent dates. Where'd they go? What'd they do? They got in a motorcycle accident, yes. Where were they when that happened? No one remembers? New Jersey. Does he have any pets? He has a pot-bellied pig, yes. And, all right, so here's the thing. Now, do any of you really, have a thing for George Clooney? Okay. No, but the question is, or we'll go back to Julia Roberts, because I think she's very pretty. I know all those things. I knew about Hazel and Phineas, Danny Moder, about Lyle Lovett. Am I ever going to meet Julia Roberts? Am I going to go on a date with her? No. I'm there. No is the answer. What about Tom Cruise or George Clooney? Are any of you ever going to meet them and go out with them and somehow become reciprocal altruism trading buddies? No. You're not, but you are storing, do you have flashcards at home with information? Because I sit there in my office and I do a lot of genetics research, and for difficult stuff that I can't remember, I write it down on cards, things about bacterial genetics, certain mutants that I want to remember. But I don't sit there writing down, Phineas, one of Julia Roberts' kids, Hazel, the other one, pot-bellied pigs, motorcycle accident, and yet they stick in my brain. And we kind of laugh it off as, oh, that's just how it is. But I'm a biologist, a scientist. I don't want to just say, oh, that's how it is. I want to know, why is it like that? And are there logical explanations? And so I want to think about that. I'm never, ever going to be friends with any of these people. Maybe it would be nice, but why is it that my brain is built so that I am keeping track of them? Here, I don't watch TV, but a long time ago, 8 hours, right? Yes, I actually don't have one. But there was a show that I remember when I was a little kid in the daytime, and there was Luke and Laura were on it. General Hospital. Now, were they a couple? On again and off again. Did they ever get married? They did. So now you're telling me social information about people. I know you won't meet them because they're not real, right? You're keeping track of social information of fake people. There are magazines in the supermarket that will tell you what has happened in various soap operas, who got involved with who betrayed whom, and all that. Why is that? Because people want to make flashcards of them? No, because somehow it feels good, like it's really satisfying that you are socking away information. Aha, I know all these things. If the situation comes up where I have to be a trading partner with one of these people, I know that he's not cheapskate, or she is a cheapskate, or something like that. And so we are built, because reciprocal altruism is so rare in the animal world, but it's really valuable, it's important to us. We have to have these features built in. Otherwise, it's not going to work. We're going to get taken advantage of. One of the things I love, I am a magazine junkie. This is from, I think, Us Weekly. And they write this little column. I think it's called something, The Scene, or On the Scene. And look at the one, John Cusack, eating with Nev Campbell, who tipped generously at Chicago's Lake Colonial. why are they writing that down? And why am I intrigued? Like, ooh, that's good to know John Cusack's a big tipper. If I go out to the gardens and he's there, I'll be okay. Or if I look at this one, different issue about, Mel Gibson sharing a poo-poo platter and entrees in a private booth at Tanda, then leaving a tip about as big as the bill itself. That's cool, right? Something about that should make you feel good. You just got a bit of social information that is going to help you. Or your brain believes that it's going to help you. Leaving a tip that big, something's going on here. So this seems just like a sort of comical aside, but it illustrates, I think, a really important point about reciprocal altruism. And that's this. We've got these brains that are really good at keeping track of social information. I could ask you stuff about Britney Spears, right? And you all would know almost everything. She's young. Give her another chance. No, I have sympathy for her. I was driving home the other day, and just before you get into Malibu, there's this Taco Bell, and it's right next to the supermarket I go to, and I see at the drive-thru literally 50 paparazzi. I see vans just parked everywhere, almost blocking PCH, and I look through the window and I see that it's her, and she's just trying to order some food. She cannot even get her car through because there's so many people blocking the way, and I thought, that is tough. You want to go out and you want to just get a taco, and you can't. It really, I'm not super interested in her, but I had a little bit of sympathy for her. So, question here, why do we keep tabs on people we will never meet? And this is the important thing here. We've got this brain that's built in such a way that we are keeping tabs on them. We're not doing it consciously or with any effort, but we are. And this is an important realization, that we've got these brains that were built for a world, the world we evolved in, and you'll see this recurring through Mean Genes. We lived in groups that only had about 100 people. So we're going to need any of those people probably at some point in our life. We are going to interact with everyone we see on a regular basis over and over and over again. And when I say the world, our brains were built for a world, I mean that we spent 99% of our evolutionary history. So the human species has been distinct for about 2 million years, and it's only in the last couple of hundred years, not even so much that, about the last 100 years, where we are suddenly in a world where we interact with many more people than we did. And natural selection is very slow. That process whereby we change organisms, it's very slow. So it adapts humans to a particular world, but the world suddenly changed, and our brains haven't responded yet. So we are really good at being hunter-gatherers in a world of 100 people. And in a world of 100 people, you got to keep track of who is sick, who's about to die, who's a cheater, who's single, who makes $20 million per movie. You have to know all those things because those are going to be useful for you. We call this, Terry and I refer to this as mismatch. Mismatch says that natural selection is really, really good at adapting organisms to an environment, but sometimes if the environment changes too quickly, you've adapted to an environment, it's changed, and now you're in an environment where you're not really adapted to it, or not so well. And the fact that suddenly we see tens of thousands of people or hundreds of thousands of people, and we see people on TV or at the movies, our brain doesn't process that. All it knows is that somehow we're having this interaction with someone, and because of that, we got to keep track. So these soap operas are playing on this desire, this satisfaction we get out of having the social information. We'll say this is our second take-home message. Humans recognize faces, keep track of kindness and selfishness. I didn't mention this, but I should have. We live for a long time as well. So when you put all these together, suddenly you have a species where it can work. Question?
So why would we need to adapt to be able to recognize thousands of faces if we only were interacting with roughly?
Good question. Why is it that we're able to recognize 1,000 faces? I think the answer is just that we developed a feature that says keep track of faces, and it wasn't like, set some upper limit. You should be able to recognize everyone in your world was probably the rule of thumb, and we were built that way. So in a situation where you satisfy a lot of these conditions that are necessary for reciprocal altruism, you expect to see it. And so you've got vampire bats. They can recognize other individuals. They have that weird situation where they'll die if they don't get food. So there's an opportunity to get help from others, but there's also the opportunity to give help. And they live a very long time. Vampire bats can live between 20 and 30 years. So there's a lot of repeated interaction. So in that situation now, it doesn't surprise me at all that we see reciprocal altruism. In the case of small rodents, they don't live that long in nature. They live maybe 6-8 months before they tend to get killed off, either by pathogens or a predator. So in that case, we expect, because they're not around for that long, and because you don't have repeating interactions, then you expect that you're not going to satisfy it. The individual that is kind is going to get taken advantage of. One of the things I think about, I told you that when we talk about kin selection and reciprocal altruism, I think about these all the time. One of the silly things about this, Terry is always thinking about it too. Anytime I tell him something that someone has done something really mean to me or something like that, his answers are always couched in terms of this. He'll say things to me like, what do you expect? R equals 0. And he has this idea where he wants to make T-shirts where it'll have something like, one of those things with an arrow pointing to the person next to you saying, I'm with R equals 0. Or he wants to have one with the arrow pointing up that says R equals 1. Now, I mean, it's silly. It's a total science nerd joke. But what does he mean by those? I'm with R equals 0. It means that I'm very wary of this other person. I don't share genes with them. And so the likelihood that altruism is going to exist is low. And when it does, we're on shaky ground. So I have to be careful. The R equals 1 means I am going to look out for myself all the time. Or, you could have the pregnant mother shirt with, R equals 0.5. But anyway, so think about that all the time. When you're thinking about your relationships with your friends, I'm with R equals 0. You got to be very careful. It doesn't mean that there is no altruism possible, but it means you have to have repeating interactions. You have to have the ability to punish. You have to have equal chance to be the giver or taker. So that's another common one. He will say, are you in a repeating interaction with that person? And if you are, that's good for you, because then you can start to establish the relationship. If you're not, it's the stamp stealer, and you have to assume they are not going to be kind to you. We write that friend and foe are fluid categories. By that, what do I mean? It's more than that they coexist. Friend and foe are fluid categories. What we mean is that, you don't have unconditional, permanent love relationships or friend relationships with anyone. At first glance, that can seem really negative and pessimistic. I like to view it the other way, that I don't have any permanent enemies. People that I thought were not my friend, we can always turn it around. If all friendship is about reciprocal altruism, I just have to remember, I have to keep track, and they're good to me, I'm good to them, and it works that way. And so it means you got to be careful with your friends. They're not friends forever unless you return their emails. And in the case of foes, they're not their foes forever if suddenly it's in their interest to have the relationship with you. So here's a question I've already given you the answer to. I think, why are humans among the only reciprocal altruists on the planet? But if I gave that to you on our midterm, which is a week from today, you would want to be able to give me a good, thorough answer there. Now, if you're trying to form a society, you want your society to work out well, it's actually useful for there to be a lot of reciprocal altruism going on. If people depend on other people, have ongoing relationships, they're a lot less likely to have conflict with those people. They're a lot less likely to kill each other. There are a lot of ways in which our society has been structured so as to reflect these things that we've talked about with respect to kinship theory. And by kinship, not just kinship theory, I also mean reciprocal altruism. Give me some examples of aspects of our society that maybe have been set up so that our world is conducive to reciprocal altruism relationships. Charities? Yeah, let's go even further. I think I put this up here to remind me of that. How many of you give blood? And after you give blood, do you wear something all day that says, "I gave blood"? Is it because they're checking the records and they need to know? Why do you do that? What happens when someone sees you and you have a little sticker that says, "I gave blood"? What do they think? What a good person, right? And so Red Cross found that they had a dramatic increase in the proportion of people anywhere they went that would actually give blood once they started using these little stickers. That seems really silly, right? Because people are just doing it out of the goodness of their own heart. Or not. It gets a little bit weird, right? But if suddenly you can get credit for this kindness, this charity that you're doing, everybody is better off. More people give blood. More people think you're a good person. Like, it's win-win. How else? No, I was going to say reflect. I will say, our kindness theory. So our theory that we've been developing has the two prongs, not just kin selection, but also reciprocal altruism. Well, what about this? I'm thinking of an example. I come here and I could have gone to the movies today, right? I love to go to the movies. Or I could have gone to the beach. I like the beach. But instead I came here. I made a bunch of overheads. I chose some pictures. I figured out what I was going to say because I think it's going to help you. Like, I think it's going to make your life better. Why would I do that? Because I get paid. And who do I get paid by? You guys are going to pay me? You're not. You gave someone else some money. And you're telling me, "Oh, no, trust me, someone else will pay you." You're saying you should rely on, Regents of University of California. Right. You never actually give me money, but UCLA is going to deposit into my account on the first of every month a whole bunch of money. And in exchange for that, I come here and I tell you some interesting stuff. And it kind of works. But money facilitates this, right? After every lecture, I don't have to pass around a hat and say, my baby needs new shoes, right? But by setting up money, suddenly I do the favor for you, but I get paid off by someone else. You have this interconvertibility of reciprocal altruism. Money is a great thing because now, like if I go and I had to have the radiator on my car fixed. Previously, if I'm going to help out this guy who knows how to fix a radiator, how am I going to help him out back? You want to hear about reciprocal altruism? I'm going to give him a lecture? Like, he's like, I'm busy fixing cars. But I can give him money, and with that money, he can go to someone else who's really good at cooking food. And they'll give him the food, and that works out. And I got the money from doing the thing that I like to do. And so you see what I mean, that suddenly I can have reciprocal altruism relationships with people previously I wouldn't have. So that's good. It's useful to set up society in such a way. There are other things that we do, right? I have a house, and my house was really, really expensive. And I didn't just have about $1 million sitting in the bank like, oh, I would like to buy that. The way if you go to the student store and you buy a pair of shoes, you give them the money. Instead, I said, I would really like this house, please. Come on, I really want this house. I'll pay you for it, I promise. But I did say that. I said, I promise you I will pay for it. And then they gave me the keys. And now I live there. How is that possible? I didn't give them $1 million. I'm giving them more. Now I'm giving someone else more. I'm giving a bank. I told the bank, I'll give you $3 million over the course of 30 years if you give them $1 million today. But I signed a contract that says if I don't do this, you can throw me in jail. You can sue me. You can take away my wages. You can do all sorts of bad things to me. And The contract now is the way, like if when I went out with Cheapskate, if I had everyone sign a contract and say, I will pay exactly the amount of money that I owe, or else you can, throw rocks at me. If I had done that and then, where it was enforceable or something like that, that would work out. So contracts as well help out. And you even have the law enforcement that allow people to call. They can call, the bank can call the police, the sheriff, and say, he has not paid his rent for 90 days. And in the contract, which we will show you, it says he can't have the house anymore, so make him go away. And they will. So you've got the law, you've got contracts, you've got money that all can allow a whole lot more reciprocal altruism to occur. Now, we could put that as a take-home message, number 3 here, that reciprocal altruism is institutionalized via contracts, money, the law. But I want to return to what I said. How can we, in our society, I just asserted it, that it is good for a society to encourage reciprocal altruism. But now we all are part of this society. I want to think about what can we do to make it better. So you can invent something like the I was a blood donor tag, and that's good. You create good in the world. Anytime we can create good that doesn't come at a cost, I think that that is a great thing. So help me think about some ways that we can encourage reciprocal altruism, both as a society, so institutionalize things, but also then in your own personal life. The first one, I'll tell you, is this. I get this thing in the mail every year. I actually have 2 of these. You see what it's called? Giving to Yale. And do you know what this, how many pages is it? This 88-page book says? No, it doesn't say give money. It says these people already gave money. Page after page after page after page. And they mail it to me. And what do I do when I get it? Throw it out? No. I first quickly look to make sure I'm in it. And I see I'm there. And then what do? What would you do? Be honest. Look for my friends. I start looking for my friends. And not only do they have everyone who gives money, they have a little legend here. Where is it? Oh, right here, that says, it says, if there's a little star next to you, it's 30,000 and up. If there is a square, 15,000 to 29,999. A diamond, 10,000 and up. And then they have these other things, a little asterisk that says, or one of these says, that you have been a donor for 10 or more years. And so there's this whole thing that's set up. And when I first left Yale, I had very little money. I was only there for a couple years. But someone there said, hey, it's really helpful to the school if you give money. Just the yes, no, did you give or not, allows them to go to someone like, the Carnegie Foundation and say, 80% of our graduates give money. That means they like us. We're doing a good thing, give money. So I thought, all right, I'll do that. They said, at first, if you can only give a little bit, so I would give $10. And they have a little card, and I would give it, and then the next year I'd give $10. And one year they said, we'd really like you to up your pledge. And so I, in a massive 50% increase, I started giving $15. And I talked to someone once a few years ago, and they said, we got that stupid book from Yale. They said, that's cool. I saw you've given for 10 consecutive years. And all of a sudden, I'm being perceived as, what you said before, you're a good person. Because I have given a grand total of, I think, about $140 to Yale. But the fact is, it would have been easier. It's a pain to send this to them, and I do it. And that's not the only one. I get these all, here, the annual report of giving from Harvard University. Same thing, like it works. They put together this glossy thing with pictures of people, and so you look, and same thing. It's like, who are my friends? Are they in there? Did they register the money I gave? It helps. It causes people to do things that are good. Giving money to schools, I think is good. I haven't seen UCLA having a book. I'm sure they have something like that. So you've got the donor list. You've got the Red Cross donor tabs. Volunteer work. I write a lot of recommendation letters, mostly for students who want to go to medical school, but I write about 50 letters a year. I've written more than 500 recommendation letters. Every person who is applying to medical school has on their resume their section on volunteer work. This is work that they're doing for nothing. Except that, as many of them have told me, you cannot get into medical school if you haven't done your volunteer work. That's a comical statement, right? Because it's internally inconsistent, right? It's not volunteer work if you have to do it. And they all put it down there, and then what do they get? They get credit for it. Wow, you're a good person. Wow, you volunteer a lot. And that's okay, right? By giving them credit for this, it causes a bunch of people actually to do volunteer work, which is a good thing. And the good thing they get later is other people think, this is someone who is going to do this thing that comes at a cost to them for no clear benefit at the time, but it is kind of a signal that maybe they're someone that you want to get in a reciprocal altruism relationship with. What about as an individual? Some of these things now can seem sort of silly. Nonetheless, I told you that of all the topics we're going to talk about, this is the one that has more of an impact on my life every day than any other topic, because I want to have friends. I want people to like me. You probably do too. And there are things you can do once you understand this reciprocal altruism that make you realize there is no unconditional love. No one is just going to love you and give you stuff. Santa Claus might, but they're not going to do that if you don't return the favor. And so the more you realize, I have to be kind to others, I have to do these nice things for others, I have to acknowledge when I am in their debt. And so things like this, using names, seems unrelated to this at all, except that it says, in the mass of people that I am interacting with, I recognize you as a distinct individual. Because of that, we now have, what is the beginning of a relationship. It's a silly thing, but the person who hears you use their name, now they are inclined to be kinder towards you. What else could you do? Silly thing, you're changing lanes. You make eye contact with someone. As soon as you do that, they're a lot more likely to let you do it because things get triggered in your brain. They're looking at me. We have a relationship. I'm going to be a trading partner with this person in the hunter-gatherer world I live in. It's silly, but it's this turning something into an actual individual relationship with someone else. What else did I write down here? Oh, the gift closet, one of my favorite things. I wrote about that in Mean Genes. Give gifts to people. I say the gift closet. Every time I see something that I think someone I know will actually like or appreciate, I just buy it. I don't give gifts, as many gifts on Christmas or birthdays. But randomly give someone a gift can come at low cost to you, and see what happens. Let's do this as a class experiment, okay? I want all of you today to give someone a gift. And it can be a silly gift. It can be a Dee Reese cookie. It can be something really trivial. Buy your roommate something from Jamba Juice that they like, and see what happens. The low cost to you. See if you actually get paid off. See if you get paid off better, okay? I'm going to stop here, but I want to report on Tuesday. I'm going to ask you about the gifts you give, and you're going to see that we actually can create good in the world through reciprocal altruism. All right, I'll see you on Tuesday.